Hey guys, what's up? My name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel, and today is Saturday, December the 19th, and that means it is time for my second reading update for the Reindeer Readathon. So I'm actually going to kind of be doing some gift wrapping while I discuss this because I have put this off to the very last minute. I've just been kind of accumulating gifts in my closet and I need to wrap them, and I did actually finish up my Christmas shopping today. So I'm just gonna kind of use this time to kind of multitask. So the book that I was reading for my last update that I was like in the middle of, that I finished this week, was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And you guys, I loved this book. So I know what you're all thinking. Do we really need another Sarah J. Maas stan in the world? But let me tell you, whether we need it or not, I'm here. Here I am. I'm a stan. I can't even describe to you how much I enjoyed this book. So we have Feyre. I talked about this a little bit in my previous video. We have Feyre, and she has taken on the responsibility of caring for her family, feeding them, and just basically giving them general care after the passing of her mother. And you often forget in the stories that Feyre is actually the youngest of her sisters, because with the way that she acts and cares for them, you would think that she would be the older sibling, because they generally would feel responsible for their younger siblings' welfare. And that's actually interesting. But the story starts with her out on a hunt for food for her family. It is the middle of winter and she sees a deer, but before she shoots this deer, she also sees a wolf. And she does think to herself that this wolf could be a fairy that has shapeshifted, but she ultimately decides that she doesn't care. Her family needs this deer. They need this sustenance to survive this winter. So she decides to kill the deer, and she also kills the wolf because she can make quite a bit of money off of his fur. So that happens, and then immediately after this happens, another wolf bursts into her family's home, and he is demanding to know who killed his friend. So it turns out that it was in fact a fairy, and there was a treaty after a war between the human world and the fairy world many years ago. The treaty says that you have to give a life for a life in these instances, and instead of literally taking her life and killing her, the fairy tells her that she will come live with him in the fairy world on the other side of the wall, and that will be how she gives up her life for killing his friend. Well, once she gets there, she gets to the spring court with Tamlin, who is the fairy, and she finds out that he is a high lord, and she meets his emissary, who is Lucian. And I mean, let's just talk about how amazing Lucian is. But she finds out that things in the fairy world are not necessarily what she was taught as a child, and she realizes that maybe she doesn't need to hate these beings as much as she's been taught that she should. But as I kind of discussed in my previous update, I was a little bit spoiled about what was going to happen in the second book. It wasn't necessarily this particular book that I was spoiled for, but I knew going into the second book kind of how it was going to end up, but I didn't really know how it was all going to play out. And I also kind of worried how you would go from the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses and end up where Feyre ends up in the second book. So saying that, I did end up reading the second book, which is A Court of Mist and Fury, and this book was so good. Like, I think this is the book that really pulled me into the series, and I could not stop reading. But I literally can't tell you anything about the premise of this book without spoiling the first book. Like, there's nothing. There's just nothing I can tell you because it will absolutely spoil the first book. But just know that the second book is definitely so many times better than the first book. and the character dynamics in this second book are fantastic. I literally cared about every character, and I guess I can't say that I cared about them because there are some characters that obviously I dislike, but I was never really indifferent towards any of the characters in the story. I don't know, like, Sarah J. Maas really knows how to write characters that you just get attached to. And so I think after this book was when I went on Etsy and like saved a bunch of bookmarks that I plan to buy later related to the characters, and that's just, I don't know, that's just not something that I've ever done before. Yet here I was doing that in this book, and I could not resist, so I went ahead and picked up A Court of Wings and Ruin. Once again, can't tell you a single thing about this book without spoiling anything from the other two, but I will say that without being super spoilery, I think I mentioned in my first update how much I hated Farrah's sisters, and there is a bit of a redemption for them in the next books, but still, they're not necessarily my favorite. I know that a lot of people really are big fans of Nesta, and honestly, she's the main focus of the book that's coming out in 2021, A Court of Silver Flames. And while like I said, there's a bit of a redemption there, I still really love Farrah as the main character. But I picked up A Court of Wings and Ruin because I just couldn't let the series go. And I never wanted this book to end because I didn't want to leave this world that Sarah J. Maas has created. I didn't want to leave these characters. Like I said, the character dynamics are just fantastic. Now, there is a lot going on in the third book, understandably. Like, if you know anything about what happens in the third book, then you understand why there's so much going on. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of background that you kind of have to try to remember. And I did have to kind of reread a few things a couple of times to understand because of how many characters there are. But it didn't really take away from the story for me. Like, it didn't leave me confused that I wasn't enjoying what was going on. And I did like read the first chapter in A Court of Frost and Starlight, I think it's called. It's like a novella, but I read like the first chapter and like a page of the next one because there were a preview in A Court of Wings and Ruin. And I actually messaged someone who's doing the readathon with me because I knew that she was going to be reading it this month, because I saw on Goodreads a lot of people talking about how they did not like A Court of Frost and Starlight. They thought that it was kind of unnecessary. But the person that I had messaged on Instagram, she said that she thinks that a lot of people maybe went into it thinking that it was going to be a full book, and they didn't really give it the consideration that it's just a little fun novella to kind of take you back to this world. So I'm looking forward to it. She invited me to buddy read it with her starting on the 24th. So I get off like half a day that day, and we don't have any plans for that evening or anything. So I'm actually really eager to read that because I literally can't stop talking about this series. My husband I've been driving him crazy because I haven't been able to put it down, and I keep like telling him about it and he just doesn't care. But I really enjoyed this. I'm really looking forward now to A Court of Silver Flames in 2021. Like, I'm going to have to pick it up as soon as possible. And it's interesting because I thought that I was going to be able to hold off and only read one of these books per month because Mel Reads is doing Thorns and Roses along, and we're supposed to read like one book a month up through, I think Silver Flames comes out in February, and we're going to do like the live show for that in like March or April or something to give people time to get the book and read it. But here I am. I read all 3 books back to back, and now I'm going to read A Court of Silver Flames. So I didn't discuss like the prompts that I use these for, because I didn't end up having to kind of change my TBR, but I read A Court of Thorns and Roses for Donner because it's something that's hidden. I think that's what the prompt is for. And then A Court of Mist and Fury was for a book with a map. And then I'm going to use A Court of Wings and Ruin for the struggle prompt, but I'm also, for that prompt, in the middle of The Hate You Give. I started listening to the audiobook yesterday at work, and I'm really enjoying this one so far as well. And I'm going to probably use it as like my sling prompt, because you can, at the end, if you've completed all your prompts and your Christmas star, you can repeat one of the other prompts for extra points. And so that's what I plan to use that for. As far as The Hate You Give, like I said, I'm really enjoying it. Obviously, this is a very heavy book that discusses the topic of racism and police brutality in the United States. There's also some other, I think, important discussions within it. So our main character, she attends a private school, but she lives in another area of town. She almost feels torn between 2 worlds. She feels like she has to be different versions of herself in each of these environments that she is in every day. And she has a friend at the private school she attends who just, I mean, sucks overall. She makes microaggressive comments that are just very stereotypical. I'd literally, like, all the reviews talk about how awful this girl is. There's also a few other aspects. Like, this book really discusses a lot of things. I think that there's also some parts in the book that are a little cheesy. I don't like to use that, just because there's a lot of like pop culture references. There's a lot of references to like Harry Potter, or like I think the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and just kind of things I think that she's trying to use to make the characters relatable and also give the characters conversation and talking points in the story. And I don't know, for some reason it doesn't feel sincere in that sense, but for me that doesn't relate to what the story's about overall. It was very hard, because I listened to the audiobook, it was very hard to hear the part where Khalil dies, because that is what the story revolves around. Star, the main character, and her friend have left a party, and he's on his way to take her home, and they get pulled over, and the police officer ends up shooting him and killing him, and there are riots that break out in their town, and Star is left to deal with this guilt because she doesn't want people to know that she was with him that night, because she doesn't know what kind of repercussions that's going to bring for her. But she's also torn because she feels like she needs to stick up for him, because the media is portraying him to be this one person when she's known him their entire lives. So she knows that that's not who he is, and they're also stating things that aren't true about what happened that night. And so she feels the need to stand up, but she's ultimately scared. And it also deals a lot with kind of the PTSD of the situation from her being there and witnessing this horrendous act, and how that affects her interactions with the police and white people in general in the future. And there's also discussions about gangs and gang violence, and how that affects different people within the community. This story just covers a lot of topics, and I think that the author does it really, really well. I'm definitely going to link some Own Voices reviews in the description below, because I know that that's important to have with these types of stories. Really enjoying it so far, and I think it is going to be a 5-star. Like, the only gripe I have about it is that little aspect with the pop culture references, but it's not important to what the story is trying to portray. I think that Angie Thomas is doing a really good job in portraying all these things and the different aspects that come with the police and white people in general in the story. And so she's also torn because she feels like she needs to stick up for him, because the media is portraying him to be this one person when she's known him their entire lives. So she knows that that's not who he is, and they're also stating things that are just very hard to hear. these horrendous situations when police jump to conclusions and someone is ultimately murdered because of it. But like I said, that is going to be probably my slaying prompt, slaying it prompt for a book with a struggle. And then I wanted to read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna for my book that was intimidating, but apparently everyone and their mother wants to read this book as well, because my library is closing. So the only option I have for getting this is an audiobook or physical book, or an ebook. And I've really been enjoying the audio and ebook format because I can listen to the audiobook while I'm just kind of working on my usual daily things at work. And then with the ebook, I can read when I have downtime. I can read it pretty much anywhere. I can read on my phone, on my Kindle, on a computer, wherever. It's just a lot more convenient. So I looked on Libby through my library, and like it was saying, it was going to be available in 23 weeks. There were so many people reading it, so many people on hold for it. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do? I don't know what I want to do for my intimidating book. I think I'm going to use Addie LaRue, because everybody else was so much smarter than me during the readathon and like added Addie LaRue in for a prompt, and I just added it on at the end because it's the group buddy read for the readathon. But I think I'm going to add it on because I am a little intimidated by it because of the writing style and the fact that I've never read a V.E. Schwab book, and I know that people are either really loving this or they're not big fans. So I'm a little nervous about going into it because I know that it's like a slower book. It's not fast paced. It's not really plot driven from what I understand. It's very much character driven. So I think I'm going to use that as intimidating. But I also had started the audiobook for Barack Obama's book, A Promised Land. I don't know. That one is very intimidating. It's huge. The audiobook is like 30 hours long, and I would like to use it as my intimidating book, but I do not think I'm going to finish that this month. In between listening to the audiobooks from my other books for the prompts, I just do not think that it is a feasible thing that I will be finishing A Promised Land in the month of December. But if I do, then I guess I will submit it for my intimidating prompt. But that is where I'm at now for my reading for the readathon. This week obviously was far more successful than last week, and that is thanks to me becoming obsessed with the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Can't wait, honestly, to get them and physical copies, because I have A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I have the old version because when I bought them I didn't realize the covers had changed, and I would like to get the new cover versions and reread and tab them. I've never tabbed books, and I've never wanted to reread books so fast in my life, you guys. I don't know why this series literally just stole my heart. I haven't enjoyed a series so much in such a long time. I think that's why it's just been such a fun ride for me, because I haven't had this experience in a while. But I think that's going to be all for this update. Thank you guys so much for letting me multitask while I talk to you about these books, and I'm very excited about the books that I have on the rest of my Reindeer Readathon TBR. There are some very exciting 2020 fantasy, young adult fantasy releases, so I'll definitely be letting you guys know when I get to those and what I think about them, and hopefully I get to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue this week, so we'll see. Hopefully I have a lot of reading time with the holiday coming up, and I only have to work half a day on Thursday, and obviously I'm off on Friday. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Please check the description so that you can find my Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Instagram all there. I kind of update there pretty regularly, and I would love to talk to you guys about books. I'm loving finding new bookish friends, and it's been so wonderful to have this platform to just kind of discuss these with you guys. But again, thank you so much for watching, but that is all from me for now. Thank you. Bye!